¿Qué pasa to the pack? It is Pack here. In today's video, I'm talking about the worst 80 overall club members in NBA 2K history. So I made this video, but it was the worst 90 overall club members in NBA 2K history. And how I kind of base it off of is that I looked at the day one roster of every single 2K, which means coming into a season, what the 2K believe ratings were, and talk about players that were undeserving of 90 overalls. Well, now I'm going to do it with 80 overalls. But to do that, I do think we need to describe what an 80 overall is. So 90 overall players, I've always felt, is basically a household name. Trae Young, for example, is a 90 overall club member. This is someone that you think of as one of the better players, a borderline superstar in the league. Guys that can lead teams to a championship maybe, right? But what are 80 overall club members? Because being in the 80 overall club is still a really big deal. In my opinion, these are NBA players that fans know pretty well. It's not like a bench player. It's usually a starter or someone that's at least a really good role player, right? I'm going to give you two examples of players that are in the 80 overall club at exactly 80 overall right now. The first one's Buddy Hield, who averages 17 points, is one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA. He is an 80 overall player. He's someone who's really good at what he does, which is shooting threes. And you have Mike Conley. Although Mike Conley isn't the crazy scoring juggernaut he used to be, he only averages 10 points a game. He averages 7.5 assists, so he's a great playmaker and still plays defense. So Mike Conley is great at multiple things, therefore he's an 80 overall, but he's not necessarily an all-star anymore. These are 80 overall players. Now, we're going to look at NBA 2K history and determine who are the worst 80 overall rated players ever, okay? If you like that kind of content, please join the pack and subscribe. Let's get it made. First up is a notorious player on this channel, Gary Harris. Okay, now looking back in time, maybe I'm being a little harsh on Gary Harris, but the only thing I can support my argument is that Gary Harris was only in the 80 overall club once in his career in NBA 2K18, where he was an 81 overall. And to be completely fair to him, he was a good defender who was averaging 15 points on 50% from the field and 42% from three. To be completely honest, Gary Harris did deserve to be an 81 overall. I was just being a hater, and this is just an excuse to bring that up. That being said, compared to all the other 80 overalls in history, I do think he's one of the worser ones compared to everyone else. At number 9, it is Robert Covington, 80 overall in NBA 2K18 with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So in that year, coming into the new game, he was averaging 13 points on 41% from the field, which is not a great percentage. 2 steals and a block a game. The reason why he was an 80 overall club member was his fantastic defense. He was an all-defensive player. That's not really a debate, so I can't really deny that. But there's a lot of players that are great defenders that aren't really that high. Like Marcus Smart, who's Defensive Player of the Year last year, is only an 82 overall. So just because you're a pretty good defender doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a great rating. Andre Robertson was one of the better defenders in the NBA. He was like a 76 for almost his entire career. Robert Covington was, he was averaging 13 points a game, but on really bad efficiency. So I do think that even though he was a good role player, to say he was an 80 might be stretching it. Up next at number 8 is Austin Rivers, 80 overall on the Clippers of NBA 2K18. I honestly think NBA 2K18 was going a little wild with the ratings, but Austin Rivers. So Austin Rivers is a very popular NBA player because of 2 reasons. First, of his high school mixtape, and also because Doc Rivers is his dad. Okay, so he's a popular name in the NBA. Was he ever an 80 overall? No, he was not. The season coming in was his best year ever, where he was averaging 12 points per game on 44% from the field on only 28 minutes a game. These are pretty good scoring numbers. When you're only a scorer and you're not averaging 20 points a game, you're not going to be in the 80 overall club. Gary Trent Jr. is averaging 20, and he's not in the 80 overall club while also being an elite defender. How is Austin Rivers an 80 while averaging 12 on okay efficiency? Look, Austin Rivers was solid. He was like a 77 for a lot of his career. I'm not saying he was a bad NBA player, but an 80 overall is a prestigious honor. He wasn't a part of that. Up next at number 7 is Rodney Hood, 80 overall in NBA 2K17 on the Utah Jazz. So, hold on. I know a lot of you are like, you're being hella disrespectful to Rodney Hood. I will say he had really good scoring stretches, a little bit with Cleveland and a little bit with the Blazers, Rodney Hood was doing okay pre-injury, okay? I'm not saying that he was a really good scorer, but in terms of an entire season, he only averaged 13 points on 40% from the field. That's not good, okay? Yes, could Rodney Hood have scoring spurts? Yes, he could, but he was never like, he was just a shooter who could hit some shots here and there. That was really it. Again, J.R. Smith's highest rating ever was only an 81 overall, and he's a better scorer than Rodney Hood and a way better defender. So if J.R. Smith is barely making it into the 80 overall club, I cannot defend Rodney Hood being there. Rodney Hood wasn't like a bad player, and there was a little bit, but I'm not talking about mid-season updates. I'm talking about going into another season. They gave him an 80 overall, when in my opinion, he didn't deserve it, and 2K agrees because that was the only time in history he was an 80 overall. At number 6 is Iman Shumpert, 80 overall, an NBA 2K13 on the Knicks. Before you get mad at me, I love me Iman Shumpert. He had some of the coolest posters. He was very athletic. The Knicks fans loved him, but staring at it objectively, 10 points a game on 40% from the field in 29 minutes a game isn't that impressive. Yes, he was a really good athlete, and he was getting 1.7 steals a game, which isn't bad, but to say he was an 80 overall club member is pushing it. The truth of the matter of Iman Shumpert is this: he was on the Knicks and he got overhyped. He was a solid player. Was he an 80 overall club member? No. At number 5 on the list, we have Michael Olowokandi. Okay, now Michael Olowokandi was a really high draft pick who was an 80 overall in the very first 2K game on the Clippers. This was his second NBA season, so of course, being a really expected good player on a bad team, they thought Michael Olowokandi was going to be very good, and they gave him an 80 overall. But he only averaged 10 points a game, 8 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks. 43% from the field as a center is terrible in 31 minutes a game. Not good numbers for Michael Olowokandi. He had a lot of hype. He was expected to be good. No, there's a reason why he had an 80 overall because of the expectations of him, but he just wasn't that good. Now, at number 4, we have Andris Bendrons, who was on the Warriors in NBA 2K8, and he was an 80 overall. Now, in defense of Andris, he was this Latvian player who was averaging 9 points and 9 rebounds and 1.7 blocks on 60% from the field in only 29 minutes a game. Okay, so these are good. These are actually pretty good numbers for either a starting center or a backup center. I'm not going to act like these are like terrible numbers. That being said, these are Jakob Poeltl numbers, and Jakob Poeltl's actually doing better numbers than these. Okay, and Jakob Poeltl wasn't in the 80 overall club for most of his career. Okay, so just want to clarify that. Yes, Bendrons is not a bad player, and he's like around a 78 to a 79. But an 80 overall, he needed to have a little bit more of an offensive game, or at least a better rebounder to be an 80 overall. But he was just a tick off of it, and I think he just doesn't deserve that right. At number 3, we have Adrian Griffin, an 82 overall in NBA 2K1 on the Celtics. This is his only year he even has remotely this high of a rating, and I don't know why they gave it to him. He was a known good three-point shooter who was averaging 7 points a game, okay? He did not score a lot. Adrian Griffin was on the Celtics team. He hit some threes when they were open. He was a good standing shooter, but like, I cannot give you an 82 overall when all you're doing is averaging 7 points and hitting open shots. You got to bring more to the table than that. At number 7, we have Zelko Rakic, 80 overall. I'm gonna pause right here. I have never heard of this man in my life. Everyone before I was fine, but I'm not gonna sit here and say I know who Zelko is. But he was an 80 overall in NBA 2K2 on the Pistons. He was the 54th pick in the draft. Okay, he averaged 7 points and a block. That's it. So I don't know where they got an 80 overall from. If he was like a top 5 pick, then maybe I can understand why they would give him an 80 overall. But I don't know. They must have thought this dude was going to be like Luka Doncic or something. Don't know where they got this idea. And finally, at number 1 is Jonathan Bender, 80 overall in the very first 2K game on the Pacers. Now we have to give a pass to 2K. This is the first 2K game ever. They didn't know what they were doing. But to be honest with you, most of the ratings weren't that crazy. This is the only player in that game where I was like, what? 3 points per game in 5 minutes. He was a 5th pick in the draft. That's all he has going for him. He didn't do anything. He was never really that good for his career. Never had a crazy season or anything. He was like a 70 overall that they gave an 80 overall, which is wild to me. I think this is what taught 2K to be more relaxed on player like rookie ratings, because I have no clue where they got the idea that this is a good rating for a player like Jonathan Bender. But okay, that is it. What do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree? Leave it in the comments below. And if you like this channel, please give it a sub. I'll see you guys next time.